And we are live with Frank Rogala. Thanks for joining us, Frank. How you doing?
Hey, you're welcome, guys.
I was browsing your YouTube channel there. It's pretty interesting. You got a lot of really short little awesome awesome gems in there.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, I, Cliff Dunning's been after me for like years to do a podcast. Like
Oh, okay. Yeah.
what you guys are doing. And the thing is I was looking at his model. I'm thinking I would get like banned. And I can't keep an advertiser. So then you get the no agenda model and what you guys do. The value for value thing, right?
Yeah.
So that to me looks appealing because it's like you don't go into doing this to make. I mean, it'd be nice if you could pay the bills and make a living from it, but it's there's greater motivations for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so he's got me thinking about it. But I mean, it's like one more thing to do. And I'm a little intimidated at the moment because of working on this book that I've been told has to be done in June. And that's like a book goes out and it has your name on it and it's out there forever. So you want to make sure you do it right. It's because I grew up in the music business. From like in 1980, I got my first record deal, and those records go out and they're on eBay, they're everywhere. They stay around forever. So I have a sense for the importance and the permanence when you put something out into the you know
Yeah. Yeah. Well, is that book Beyond the Mainstream: Rethinking Reality and Human Knowledge, or
yeah.
is that a
So
different one?
yeah, let me give you the genesis of this, because this is I basically have to get my elevator pitch together, and you guys are a little bit early because I don't have the book out yet, so
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
going to
Perfect.
use it on you. So I started. I kind of had like this kind of shakeup in my life, and I'd always been fascinated by ancient civilizations and the technology I saw, but I just was an armchair guy. I hadn't really been out there. I had kind of a relationship that just kind of like just dissolved around me. I'm like, what happened here? And at the same time, a cousin of mine had come over to visit, and we grew up together. And I said, I had this story in mind, and I want it to be fictional, but I want to have it talk about what's really going on, because I know what's going on is what we think is going on, and I have most of the answers, but I don't have them all. And so I started showing him megalithic sites, and I said, here's some examples, right? And I had never been anywhere. I don't know if I'd even been to Canada. So it's right over there, right? um, so I get a text, and he's like, at Machu Picchu. And then a couple weeks later, I get a text, and he's the Bosnian pyramid. And I'm like, dude, like I piqued his interest, right? So then he sent me an email about a trip going to Egypt, and I didn't know what a trip to Egypt should cost. I thought it should be expensive, right? And I didn't know who Nassim Haramein was, and so I'm like, and I thought, okay, this is just after everything kind of dissolved. Okay, I'm going. I'm going to pay. I'm going to do this. It's going to. And so I show up, and I literally had no idea who Nassim was. I looked him up a little bit, and I'm like, oh, physics, whatever. And we got on the plane from Cairo to Aswan, and I had the seat next to him, right? And so I sit down, and he turns to me, and goes, well, who are you? And I'm like, who are you? So then
He's not used to that.
Dude, he's like I have learned so much. I mean, like in 2 hours, completely just downloaded so many things that it just kind of launched me off. And then I have like 3 NDAs whenever I'm with him that I have to sign. So I have to be careful what I say. Let's just say um, we got access to a lot of stuff that people don't normally get access to. And I saw a lot of things that helped answer things. And he has had a long history and knows a lot of people. So it really kind of brought things together, right? And and this was a brutal tour. Like, you're getting in at like, you know, uh, 9 or 10, and then you're going to eat a quick meal. It's literally that late. And then he has a physics lecture till midnight, right? Then you're getting up at, I'm not exaggerating, 4 a.m. and getting on a boat to go to another thing. And it was like just freaking exhausting. But for some reason, I just clicked with these physics lectures, and I haven't had physics since high school physics, And I'm like, wait, you mean if you've got the electromagnetic force over the colloidal force, that means you could control gravity with you could control the EMF, blah, blah, and everyone in the room's looking at me. I'm like, look, I don't know. I just could see it, And he goes, yeah, he can see it, right? And
And the weight of the proton is the same as the whole universe. And
oh yeah, well, and basically, like I got like how he extrapolated that out. He actually figured the correct mass of a proton like a year before they actually figured it out by backwards engineering it and then going out anyway. So spend a bunch of time with him. Then Muhammad Ibrahim, of course, is amazing, and Muhammad's like, if they are blue, they are extraterrestrial, you know. And he's giving me all these like little sidelights here, because he knows like I eat this stuff up, and then I'm making my own notes. Anyway, so then I meet a few more people like William Brown that he works with, and then Trevor Grassi I got introduced to by Mohammed, and then he's got a William Brown, which is the guy that helped Zahi do the Giza Plateau. Anyway, there was it kind of like this list. You met this person, so I met that person, and since I knew that person, and I got this whole catalog of people that were making incredible, earth-changing, ground-shattering, scientifically provable discoveries that were completely ignored by the mainstream, right? And then at the same time, one of my best friends is like a 90-year-old JPL scientist who is also an expert on global climate, travel to Mars itself, economic booms and busts. I mean, this is the freaking genius of everything, but he's just, you guys kind of reminded me of this because you were talking about this lately about, boomer, the heads of boomers, like thinking that everything is worked in their way. So they have trust for what's going on in the government. Right. And I mean, I'm 70, so, I'm a boomer, but
barely.
So yeah, I'm in there. But I picked this dude to be an author, an editor of my book. I have 4 editors because my book is basically the first 90% of it is not for guys like you, because you guys already know shit's going on, right? But it's for all the people that kind of know something's going on, but they don't know quite what it is. And so I needed to put in stuff that was really documented, that would blow people's minds, so it kind of opened them up, right? Then they could see what the problem is, and then, okay. Oh, sorry about that. Let me see if I can get that.
Oh, we didn't even hear it.
We couldn't hear it.
Oh, awesome. Good. Then I won't worry about it. So literally this just happened. I was fighting with AI because I have this incredible reading disability. Like when this book, I probably should go back a little bit. So I was in Greece. This is later. I kind of stayed in touch with Nassim, and we're in Greece, and I'm standing next to him, and I'm like, because it had just been bothering me, all of my friends and all of these things, and they're like, literally will change the entire culture, Earth. It'll wake everybody up if they understood these things. And I said, what if we reorganized human knowledge instead of having it all be like this line? And if it doesn't fit, it's an anomaly. It's it's pseudoscience. It's whatever. And we do it like the universe does, like in a toroid, right? And I said, let's say like it's a new idea, and every idea, because we all know things we were told that were wrong that we now know are right, and we all remember things that we were told that were right that we know are wrong. And even in physics, things that are constants, like the speed of light, when water boils. I mean, they've got like 6 constants, I think.
Dark matter.
Yeah. Well, okay. Get me started on that in a minute. So those things vary under different conditions. Like the speed of light will vary near the accretion disk of a black hole. And so what the point is, this knowledge is dynamic. So putting it in a straight line is not benefiting anybody. And it also occurred to me that if you're a warlord, a pope or a chief or a king, it benefits you to keep everybody kind of in line if it's along this narrative. So I said, okay, let's take like every crazy idea. Every idea goes up here, and it goes out there. It's dark blue. Pyramids are a tomb. Starts out over here. Flinders Petrie or whoever the first dude was that thought that, right? And then you take corroborating things that come up. Oh, we found this cartouche in the Great Pyramid, so we think that's Khufu. Oh, we found this carbon, from the wood that was in here, and we think it's this old, and oh, we think that they moved the stones by boat, all that crazy stuff. But this goes up there dark blue. But as things corroborate that make sense, they shoot neurons across and they pull each other in. So things towards the center become red. And so what happens is, instead of this line, you've got weighted information out there that will attach depending on, if it's been corroborated, peer reviewed, connected in some other way, and it draws it in closer, right? So then you got this, crazy guy, Christopher Dunn, who comes up with, hey, I think this is a machine. Got these materials, we got this geometry, we got these wave guides, and so his information up there. He starts out dark blue, but then we've got, geologists, we've got physicists, we've got, structural engineers, and their stuff starts, shooting neurons out. He's pulling in, right? Then we get, just lately, these scans, and now there's getting to be 3 or 4 corroborating scans of the plateau that are corroborating the Biondi scans, and so those things shoot. It pulls in closer and closer. The tomb narrative stays out there because there's literally so little evidence of it. Anyway, what I'm saying is like, it occurred to me that the other thing is that we are just this arrogant bag of water walking around thinking we know what's going on. In the electromagnetic spectrum, if you took a beach, I had to find metaphors for all this stuff for my book, because it was just, everything was kind of mind blowing and you couldn't put your head around it. So you got a beach and it goes on as far as you can see, this beautiful beach. You take 1 grain of sand off that beach, and that represents what we're actually perceiving around us. Yet we think we see it all, and then we put people in homes and things that see other things, and that might have cracked through or had other visions of it. But we have the human water bag of arrogance bias, right? And there's all kinds of biases. To pretend that any information is not biased is just not, it's ridiculous, because depending on, and we don't even know. One of the questions I asked early in my book is, how do you know what you know, right? Was it something you physically experienced? You burned yourself, was it something you were told? Was it something that your community all believed, so you kind of just bought into it? This is also why I have a whole section on autodidacts, because autodidacts, people that have taught themselves, like Nassim Harmi, he has no letters behind his name, right? And I'll be chatting with him. He goes, you're higher level of this conversation is higher level than I have with supposedly my peers, people that have the letters behind their name. And which kind of took me back. It was a nice compliment, and I'm not saying I understand everything he says, but what I'm saying is that you don't even know it happens when you go in and you're going to get those letters behind your name. You're taking these classes and you're being taught these things. There's a level of programming that happens.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen to autodidacts,
Yeah.
And so if you look at history, all the greatest accomplishments have been made, like Leonardo da Vinci. I mean, everybody that has really evolved us is an autodidact. They didn't go through, and conform and get the letters, and so it got me into like looking, what is an archaeologist and where does that come from? Because there was so much crazy shit. Like, you go to enough of these places like you guys have, and you start going, well, that makes no sense. Well, I mean, if you even have picked up a rock or shovel, and you're telling me that Great Pyramid was done, in 20 years by, a bunch of slaves, I'm just like, I don't know what to say, and then you see the stones in the plateau that are the size of like my house, that are so close together that you can't get anything between them. I mean, along with a bunch of other stuff that I saw that I'm getting permission to see if I could talk about it in my book yet, because literally in Egypt, there are steel gates everywhere with a guy in front of them. And if you get inside, right, and you get a picture and you put it on the internet, that guy goes to prison for life, and I got a few of those pictures. But what it also uncovered is how complex this situation is. It's like, it's not just for the ease of those in charge that information is handled like this. And so just to go back to it. So what I'm proposing, the whole first part of my book is going through all the crazy ass shit that you guys are pretty much aware of. Like, I mean, through this, I ended up like, you know, getting to know MK Ultra survivors, getting to know people in the secret space program, I mean, all the crazy shit. And I started off being 10 years old with my brother in broad daylight, seeing a ship appear the size of a football field, like 100 feet away in front of us, and no sound, and then we didn't see it go anywhere. So I think they kind of like turned us off or something, and then they went away because all of a sudden we're there and it was gone. And then a bunch of weird shit happened after that. And so from the age of 10, if you were my teacher, if you were my, you know, pastor or priest, or the president or any authority figure, and you weren't telling me what the fuck that was, I didn't trust you, because, I know what I saw. And this is 1967, right?
Wow.
So, my whole life has been like, oh, okay, yeah, let's.
How did your like time in the music industry? Because you were right on that. I would almost call it like, there's a golden age to it for like trust in those institutions in sort of the 80s, and you're kind of coming into it with a certain level of mistrust already. So I'm wondering if your like introduction into the music industry was stranger than others, because we did the whole thing with I don't know if you know who Dave McGowan is, but we did the whole thing on like the Laurel Canyon movement and how it almost seemed like that same GATE program they were doing back in the 60s, but for musically gifted children, so they could try and influence this thing on the culture. So I'd be interested in hearing what it was like getting into the music industry with this already inherent distrust of institutions.
Yeah, that's an angle. I didn't expect that one. That's a good one. Okay, so somehow I've been kind of like guided by or protected by angels is all I can say, because you guys live in rural areas. I do too. I mean, there's like 600 people in my hometown, and there's thousands of acres of wilderness around my house, and so to go from here, I went to go visit an aunt in Anaheim, and I wanted to go to Tower Records because at the time I was like into Elton John, and I knew Elton John went there to get his records. And so I picked this LA Weekly, and in the back there was an ad for a producer, engineer, studio backing, looking for talent. And I wasn't prepared with anything, and so I borrowed my uncle had this really crappy reel-to-reel, which everything is reel-to-reels, and I made a cassette and sent it in, and I come home and phone rings, and this team, and they're like, we went through like 500 tapes, and we think you guys are good. And they were freaked out that we went back to Michigan. I'm like, we'll come back, So come to find out that the main producer had been a priest, and he had left the church. Just his vibration didn't match it, right? He was really protective. The first thing he did was, because cocaine was everywhere when we got, like, my first attorney I had the same attorney as Michael Jackson. I go into his office, and he had a line on his desk, but it was plastic over it because it was funny, I guess, right? I mean, that was the level of like how much cocaine there was everywhere. And they said, okay, look, cocaine's going to do nothing for you. It's everywhere. They kind of gave us the lectures and kind of kept us out of everything. But I mean, to suddenly be from, walking outside and seeing a fox chasing a rabbit in your front yard, to like in a room with gold records all the way around. And, that was before the internet too, because there was just hookers everywhere all over Hollywood. You couldn't get, and if you were getting out of the car to go in that studio, I mean, actually, Elton John was working in there, Chuck Mangione, Giorgio Moroder. It was like one of the little boutique studios. The prostitutes were all over you, and I was just like awkward, like Northern Michigan kid, like wasn't used to that. So there, tangentially, we never fit in. Like there were scenes, and there was ways to get attention. And what happened was, the whole deal we came in on, I don't know if you know the story about Neil Bogart and Casablanca. There was a movie that just came out called anyway, if you look it up, you can find it. It was a very good movie, actually. But basically, it was just as we got half of an album done, he died. And when he died, Casablanca just evaporated. I mean, Casablanca had Donna Summer, had Kiss, and they were taking crazy chances on stuff. And at that point, we were considered like a crazy chance because we didn't really fit into like, any of the specified genres. We kind of were making our own pathway. In those days, if you really wanted to break out, you would do something that was new wave and get on KROQ. They were really big into the English stuff, and they were pretty accessible. But what ended up happening is you get friends, they get a break, and then you never hear from them again. So I kind of got the whole Hollywood thing down, right? So being there for quite a few years and just kind of like bumping my head against the wall, and then also, learning to be a storyteller. I think there was always a storyteller in me because when I was a little Catholic boy and they're teaching us the Bible, I'm like, well, that motivation doesn't really fit with this character. And I had a big problem with the motivations, just the among the biblical text of the characters. And since then, Paul Anthony Wallace and his books and things, I'm like, oh, now I see why, because it's different guys. With this guy, it wasn't the same as this guy. Anyway, so just through sheer perseverance and talent, we kind of like went from being a new wave band in the 80s, and then you can only be kind of like the cool new thing for a couple months, and then you're kind of like the old thing there. Yeah, they're always looking for the new thing from out of town, the new whatever. So once Casablanca evaporated, we kind of reinvented ourselves as NC-17, and we became like a heavier, alternative rock. But what happened was this poisoning happened of the whole music scene there. It was right about when Bill Clinton became president, and he deregulated all of the radio stations. And so then you had these huge, like Viacom and Clear Channel buying up all of these local stations. And then you would have the same program director who would program all the rock for the entire country, because they basically owned everything. Instead of having things erupt like, Philly soul or California surf or Chicago blues or, Philadelphia doo-wop or whatever, all of a sudden you had this homogenization, and it was this big takeover by the big money industries. And so unless you were going to,
when was that? When was that?
Bill Clinton, probably within his first
92, right? 92.
Clinton's first term. Because
this is past the 80s now, and you're into the 90s.
I'm in the 90s. Yeah, because we we kind of just started all over again. You don't say who you are, and you do a whole new image. You're playing clubs. And I had this violin player that he's passed away, unfortunately. I mean, if you saw, he's like muscular, just health, picture of health, but he was like one of these guys that could like literally heal people. He could play his violin and people would freaking heal. He could play it over the radio and they would heal. And I can't explain. And he could play like Hendrix. He could do Eddie Van Halen on a violin. It was a 5-string, and he hooked it to a big amp, and it was like it was incredible. I think since what I've learned, because I've run into some crazy, amazing spiritual healers and stuff, is that you just don't go around healing people. You have to learn how to protect yourself. And I think that what happened was he didn't, he was such a sweet, loving person, that it probably he took it on, and wasn't able to let it go out. So anyway, I feel like I was, like I said, guided by angels around a lot of because I know that the evil shit that goes on. And I've sat across, the thing that freaked me out the most was pretty much anybody you've seen in the movies, Julia Roberts, Mel Gibson, anybody. Like I've sat like across the table with them, and been in the spaces with them and chatted or whatever. And I don't pick up, this, evil demonic thing that we hear about, of the whole club. I know it exists, right? And it wasn't that I don't think it exists. It's what I think is, it freaks me out that they can bypass my internal intuition, So it's that's one of the things too that really gets me lately, because I get more and more sensitive, especially to environments when I go. I came back from Guatemala, and just as we got into the parking lot, Tikal, I was like, I could feel it in my stomach, the energy there. And it was so strong, I thought I was coming down with the flu. And I thought, okay, no, I know. So I took off my shoes and just put my feet in the mud. In about 20 minutes, I was like synced with it, right? So I'm really sensitive to those kind of energies. But when it comes down to like this human kind of supernatural, whatever the hell that is, transdimensional thing, man, it's like there's a wall there. So that's probably like my biggest takeaway from having been around that in Hollywood, is that it's really deceptive. And just from the research I've done on my book, let me get back to that. To distill it all down, one of the missing parts of physics has been, actually, let me jump back to dark matter and string theory, right? So I'm with William Brown. He's a biophysicist, and I was talking to him about this idea of restructuring knowledge, and he started using it in the context of our conversation, and I was like, oh fuck, because at that point I was thinking maybe I should work on this as a book. And when he started like using it in the conversation, I'm like, because the dude is so brilliant. Like, he just came out with 3 papers in the last year, and I haven't edited the video from the 5 papers I just edited. I interviewed him about with a year and a half ago. But I said, what makes me really upset is that with the money that goes into string theory and dark matter, and the more you know about physics, the more you realize dark matter is like this spackle. It's like, okay, let's say you got a house and there's a hole, but the hole is like 10 feet. It's your whole living room, right? Well, if you filled that whole thing with spackle, that's what like dark matter is to physics. It's like this big patch over something they can't figure out. And it makes no sense. There's no proof for it. There's people who have their entire careers that are built around it, that are the head of major universities, like maybe like MIT. And they, and the weird thing about academia, the way that it works, this is not the only example of it. Like, I know another person who almost didn't get their doctorate because she had proven that pretty much every megalithic temple on the earth was built with the same geometry, ratios. There was, hydrology, all kinds of stuff, right? And part of her thing was showing that when water flowed through limestone, that there was a charge created, which is a scientific thing. But the dude at the head of the department was like, our position, not our position, right? Our position is that when water goes in the ground, it's neutral. So, we can't. She had to like lose her scholarship, go to another university in order to get her doctorate, because of this like blindness, these blinders that academia has on. So that's another example of somebody else that I knew that was brilliant, that had something that everybody should be talking about. I mean, that's a story I'm not supposed to say, so I better stop talking about her, because people figure it out. Because I wanted to put that in the book, and politically, these things can be difficult for people.
Well, let me ask you a personal question about your reading disability, because it seems to me like you're picking up the stuff that Nassim's putting down. You're visualizing all this scientific stuff, including physics. Like, do you think that disability has given you advantage to visualize these things?
Yeah, I was talking because I think Nassim has the same thing, because he literally will have people, when he's giving presentations, sometimes read things off the board, because he thinks it's dyslexia, but it gets misdiagnosed. It's called scotopic sensitivity, or Irlen syndrome, and that you can get it from a bomb blast, a car crash, a fall. Some people are born with it. I asked him, I said, did you had any of these? He goes, yeah, all those. I'm like, okay. The thing is your brain gets super activated, and it will just destroy you. It will completely rob your immune system, and doctors will just go, I don't know, everything kind of looks okay. I don't know what's wrong. I don't know why you can't get out of bed. You just want drugs or something. And so I think that you are right. I think it's almost like because I have 3 brothers, and we run we've got 1,000 campsites and cabins. We do 100 cabins. We built every cabin, and and a couple of us are super ADHD, so like none of the cabins really match, and so we've got like 25 different types of campsites, 25 different types of cabins, and then you have to like sell those and let people know like what the different things. And sometimes it's just like, I think it would be better if we put the chairs over there and do, instead of just keeping it all the same. But I have two brothers that are not ADHD. So when we come up with a plan, I've got a brother that got literally put tape on the floor to show him where we're building new buildings so he can visualize what's going on. And my other ADHD brother is like, we could just see it in 3D and like rotate it in our head. And I'm not saying that I'm superior or being arrogant, because like, keep me away from a checkbook, because I can't do that, like really simple stuff like that is like letters move and things change, and I'll give you a 50 instead of a 5. And, and literally I'm thinking I see it in my head, but it'll be the wrong thing. So on some level, I think it is some type of a evolutionary odd thing. And I got really, really, really ill. I couldn't get out of bed, and I had been to enough doctors and just sat at a computer, because I had worked in search optimization specialist, for years. And I just started putting in all my symptoms and came up with this woman that had discovered it. And literally, if I drove on my driveway, went 12 minutes that way, that's where her office was.
What?
And yes. And the crazy thing was, this gets back to a subject I'll get into later about consciousness and physics. At the same time she figured this out, a woman in Finland figured it out. They were working with kids that supposedly had reading disabilities, and they found that if they used overlays of color and certain colors, all of a sudden they would disappear. And at this point, it's so developed, they'll bring out trays of colors, and they'll be like, this yellow and this yellow, and this yellow looks the same as this yellow, but when I look through that one, nothing. But this one's a little better, so it goes on this pile, right? So literally, this color ends up being a montage of maybe 10, 12, 15, and they get this big Frankenstein kind of like steampunk thing that they clamp them together as you're going through them. And it tunes it in, and the brain actually calms down. They've got, it was, if you look it up now, this is in my book too, because this is one of the things that really pissed me off, is Snopes says it's like quackery.
Synesthesia?
No, they say it's quackery, that there's no basis for it, but they literally can do like a brain scan and see, watch how the brain changes with the colors, and how it relaxes. Because at a certain level, like I said, your brain will just murder you. If it needs more energy, it'll just take it. And but even so, like New Zealand makes it illegal to screen for this. In Florida, they wanted to put an arrest warrant out for her because the optometrists were threatened by having somebody deal with glasses that wasn't an optometrist. And, this is a 90-year-old woman just trying to, help people. And the crazy thing is, like, a lot of veterans get this, because a lot of veterans have been in bomb blasts, right?
Oh, yeah.
So they end up giving him like pharmaceuticals or shit that doesn't help, and it's colored glass. And the crazy thing is like, I had been through like pretty much every horrible thing that can happen to a human's happened to me. And it's one thing, like when I talked to Nassim, he had told me about some doctors that I never would have found on my own. You can't just find them because they have stuff that they would get murdered for. Stuff that will cure anything, it's out there, but you can't be public about it. And I had gotten, my nervous system was really damaged by this. By the time it was diagnosed, she said, you probably would have lived maybe 5 more years. And, which is crazy, because it's a perceptual thing, right? And colored glass fixed it, but it would have killed me. And then right after that, I got misdiagnosed Lyme disease, and I was like numb from like the waist down, couldn't walk. And, it just like, you could poke a pin, I wouldn't feel it. And the nerves were destroyed. And it was like, because, the doctors, they go, oh, you don't have it, but they don't educate them to say, oh, the test only goes from this point of the lifespan of the, creature to this, but if it goes beyond this, we don't pick it up, right? So I got a naturopathic doctor who's been using stuff for thousands of, it goes back thousands of years, that helped me get better, but still I had all that nerve damage. And so it was basically there was 2 stem cell treatments. The first one I did was healthy baby umbilical cord blood stem cell. And actually from Nassim, I've kind of realized that's not a good idea to mix your body, your fluid. Like he one time, okay, I could talk about this. This is probably fine. He was surfing and the board, had those fins came down and cut him here, and he was just bleeding out. Like he's out in the water. And he went to yell because there's people on the shore, and nothing would come out, and it was just bleeding fast. And so he was trying to like paddle or get in or whatever. He barely survived getting in, and then he would not let them give him blood. And they were like, what? Because he did not want to mix his morphogenic field, whatever, with somebody else's, everything else, right? And so there's more to this, but so I've got some like healthy baby umbilical cord blood, and luckily it worked for me because I can see how this could be incompatible, but it brought me back like maybe 40%. And then he told me about another doctor that basically does what you do when you do PRP, which you're spinning it. You take your blood out, you spin it, it separates it, they put some drops in it, injures it, makes it thinks it's injured, it creates its own stem cells. But then he takes a laser, just a red laser, and he puts it through a laser is a bunch of sine waves on top of each other. That's what makes it so powerful. And then when it goes through this prism, it breaks it back out, and they put it on your blood for, I think it was 6 minutes. And it was like, because 5 minutes isn't enough and 7's too much or whatever, right? And it basically turns your own blood back into your own polyploid embryonic stem cells that you had when you were forming. So anything in your body that is not right, it will fix, right?
Wow, kind of resets it.
So like for me, they have a big checklist going through. Like some people go in and they just get put in their hip, or their elbow or whatever. And they were like, we're going to just do the whole body. We're just going to give you a whole bunch, right? So did that. And literally, my hair became brown. My wrinkles came out of my skin.
What?
The nerves, dude, I'm 70. Okay.
I know. I was going to mention you really don't.
I mean, this is like not surgery or anything. If I had surgery, I'd probably, make myself look a little bit more handsome on camera. But anyway, so the nerves healed, which are not supposed to heal. I mean, this is the Christopher Reeve thing, this would have healed Christopher Reeve's back, but literally this doctor, like, I got to be careful actually, because, think how quickly big pharma would murder somebody like that, so this stuff is out there. And so I'm getting this huge list of all of these people, and I'm like, what's going on? This is like not a fair world. What's being controlled? And so I realized that this control system goes back thousands of years. And what really, I would have been super embarrassed, because this last trip to Guatemala really brought things together, because I get on the bus and I'm the only guy, and the driver turns around and he goes, introduces himself, and he said, you were probably taught that the Mayan disappeared. And I'm like, yeah. And he said, yeah, we didn't disappear. We just moved north. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm on the right trip, man. So then I find out that they had to like bury their stuff, because they were burning their elders and their spiritual people at the stake. And this thing about them pulling the hearts out and murdering people on top of the pyramids and stuff. You get there and you talk to the people, and they're going, well, have you ever seen those videos of people doing psychic surgery where they reach in and they pull out things, and I think you've seen that stuff, right?
Yep.
And they said that's what our elders did. It was like, and they had altars, and these altars, they took lasers to check out the alignment. They're exactly centered. All these things are cosmologically and aligned with things. And there'll be a stela with an altar, and there's tunings. Before I jump into that, let me get back into the Mayan. Okay, so we did some Mayan fire ceremonies, and I had never heard of these before with the Mayan elders, and they still have to be really careful yet about, they've recovered some of their artifacts and things, and they have to keep them to themselves or they'll get taken away. It took them years of really hard fighting to be able to get back to their sacred sites to be able to do their ceremonies. So Mayan fire ceremonies, you basically spend hours. You're putting like cacao, you're putting flowers, you're putting candles, you're putting, and you're making a design, and they change, right? And then you have an intention, and they read things. They have these incantations from their Mayan language. They say during it, and then you go in circles around it, and it makes a vortex of the fire. And they say that's opening a channel to the ancestors, and then they can ask questions and stuff. And had some really freaky stuff happened, like where I had two friends that were passing away as I was there, and the elder says, "Yeah, it's in the brain, it's a cancer," and like stuff that, you know. And anyway, so I'm talking to them, and we're in one of the museums, and they've got a stela with their language, and they were talking about how the first part of every one of their stelas is the day, and every day has a different astrological kind of thing to it. And these Mayan elders, like they just know it. It's like they know today is this day. It's got these energies, this. So it starts off with that, and then what I learned was it's not just Mayan, but Mayan, ancient Aramaic, Sanskrit, ancient Celtic, um, and I know there's at least one or two more. All of these ancient languages that have been pretty much forcefully stomped out. They were not. This was we literally are watching a thinking with a black and white cartoon of what language used to be. Language used to make us think in a completely different way. My book would be completely unnecessary if the ancient languages had not been stomped out, because it makes our brain think, like I was talking about, like in a 3D way, right?
So spelling is literally a spell. They've really like engineered the English language to dull us down in a way.
Every language it's happened to, even like between Greek and ancient Greek, there was numerical components. I'm going to go hang out with Praveen Mohan a little bit in India in a few weeks, and because he's like very careful, because he has to navigate the academic and keep access to sites and things. But you know how it is when you can get away from everybody and go, well, what do you think about But Sanskrit, none of these ancient languages are intact. They're all like in shreds. And when you look at when you look at the genesis for what happened, like the English moved into to India, and they just basically wanted like brown-skinned people that talked and thought like an English person, and they did whatever they could to wipe the language out. And when the Spanish came to South America, it was like, burn everything, destroy everything, murder everybody that still has that language. So what the whole point of everything that I've experienced and come to is that we are extremely powerful. And I've had a couple of demonstrations of this. It was something that it was a little technique that Nassim showed me, and I did a little thing just for the fun of it. And it's a crazy thing that happened where I'd lost something in Egypt, and it appeared in my friend's house in Hollywood. And and I was like, okay. So if I can do that, like what else can I do with this, right? But basically we are not allowed to know how powerful we really are. And the thing is, anything that we're seeing, perceiving, reading, anything that makes it into the mainstream, anything that's anybody that's a celebrity, anybody that's a politician, completely controlled. Everything is a spell, right? So if we as a human species understood that our consciousness was so powerful that it changed reality. I mean, okay, got the book called The Secret, right? The Secret's only part of it. And I have to, this is something that Nassim told me. He goes, so yeah, you can like work on your own thing, but there's a field. Everybody else around you has got a field. So if you're controlling what they're all thinking, okay, we don't have enough, we have climate change, and we have pollution, and we have lack, and we have to go to war, and it's basically a spell. And if we can regain our agency, understand the power that we have. I mean, I've been to a lot of countries now, and people are really the same. They love their children. They care for their friends. They, the thing is that we're kept intentionally under stress, and we have to worry about the next paycheck. We have to worry about paying this bill. We have to worry about this illness. We have to, and you put any animal under stress. They've done it in laboratories, and you get weird behaviors, strange things happen, and so I guess, like, I'm not kidding with the title of my book. I mean, it sounds like kind of arrogant, saving civilization. Basically, what the system we have now has gotten us to this point, and we're in a bad place. And if we want to evolve past that, basically, we can just get rid of these freaking bloodlines that have been in place for all these years. I've met a few of these people. They're dumbasses. They're entitled. They're arrogant. I would take anybody, either you guys in a foxhole any day than any of those assholes, right? Because they may have remaining in their bloodline something, but the human connection to the divine is really powerful. And I'm not extremely, I'm a practical guy, but being practical is also understanding how the spiritual consciousness ties to physics. And we've been, I've been kind of boning up on my Grime America, right? And some of the guys you have on just intuitively are picking this stuff up. It's like it's being downloaded like a lot of different places. And I think that, from hanging out with Randall, like, okay, let me make a note about where I'm at here, because I'm going to get on a Randall tangent. Okay. So because of the stress my nervous system's been over and stuff, I'm super ADHD and I get a little paranoid about it. So I'd gotten some AI glasses, right? And not to be an asshole or anything, but like we were out under the stars and I happened to have signal, and it was one of those nights where Randall's looking up and he's trying to remember the number of light years away Sirius A is from Sirius B and whatever, and I'm thinking, hey, like, I can look it up. So I'm checking out, and literally by the time it Bing comes back to me, he's remembered, and it's the exact right number. And this happened like 6 times, and it's shit that like I am not going to memorize the number of light years between here and Sirius A, but Randall, it sticks in there someplace, right? And it might take him a second, but he pulls it out. The dude is like amazing. Anyway, but then to be sitting on a bus with him, like on these trips that you guys do, and him turn around and grab a phone and have him show me like how the plates come together in the Azores and talk about the Doggerland and it's like an incredible experience. He's another one of these people that in a academic gradualist world is like they're blind to seeing like yeah they're blind to seeing like what's going on all around them. And you've got a very few number of people, if you look at the entire world, that understand this, that are still hypnotized. So let's get back to like my editor, the JPL guy, right? Oh my God. So I've been fighting, you've been talking about how Chat GPT is like sucks lately, right? So what happens is I got chapters where he just is kicking my ass over, because this is what I wanted. I asked for it, right? Because I want to deal with it now before the book comes out, because the whole first part is to challenge, the established, and he's just so programmed in there. And I don't know how you work at JPL all those years and don't know what the fuck's going on, but
maybe the same NDAs.
I swear to God, he's just oblivious to it. I mean, he took like the shot and the booster and the booster and the booster. So I'm like, anyway, when you guys talk about the trying to get through to a boomer, and immediately I'm thinking myself, and I'm thinking, wait a minute. Then I realize him, and I give him chapters. Okay, for instance, this is a big part of my book, which I think is a pivotal thing. I know the guy who found the splice on the human genome where we are artificially, where doubled the neural capacity, the neural density of our brain. It was not natural. It was a splice. Okay. And but the guy's brilliant. He's got 10 other things that he's published, and if he made a point of this, it would be very dangerous for him. So I was writing a chapter, and happens a lot in my book too, is like, I know stuff, but I can't really say it because,
you're throwing somebody under the bus, or
I don't want some guard going to prison for life or this happening or whatever, right? So I'm going through all this anecdotal evidence about how humans are not like any other animal. And just from that alone, if you look at statistically, it just makes no sense. If anybody was just paying attention to the simple things, like, okay, let me give you a quick one. Every plant, animal, bug, that they looked into on Earth, other than a human, protozoa, everything up from complex mammals down, has maybe 6 to 12 genetic defects. Okay. Human beings, you know how many we have?
8 million?
Something like close to 6,000, and they keep finding more, right? So from 12 to 6,000, on this one species, right? And then you think back to this whole Tower of Babel story, which I kind of went into this in my book. It's like, okay, these monkeys are going to be trouble, right? So we gotta downgrade them a little bit, There's just incontrovertible evidence that we are genetically modified. We are not natural, right?
When? Don't tell me 800,000 years ago.
Well, I don't have the exact time period yet, because they keep finding human activity going back 2 million years now, and then it probably goes back even further. I think there's just been a lot of monkey business going on here by other non-human entities, and I've also been told by people I can't talk about that there's like 24 different types of them that have messed with us, and they all think that they own us, and they all don't get along with each other, and it's like a freaking drama. That's the thing. It's complicated. Everything gets to be a power struggle and a drama. Like, okay, quick example here. I had a friend back this is how old I am, during the Reagan administration, who was on a White House staff. He was an attorney, and these dudes would get together and they would play a game. There's like a Milton Bradley version of something like this, but it was more complicated. And basically, you had the Earth, and you would get countries, and you would have all the geological and geographic and mineral and all that stuff, in your country, and then you would play out scenarios, political scenarios, and it was like just crazy how everything just naturally happens the way it happens now. Like Venezuela gets a bunch of oil, all of a sudden Venezuela is a big problem, right? It's like
But I was going to say that those two main things are the things that I've come to the conclusion too, is that our reality is way more complicated and complex than we think, including the NIHI aspect. Like, we've been tampered with, or like Charles Fort said, we're owned by somebody else. Like, there's these things that they can't really disclose to us, because it's not like, oh, are we ready for disclosure? It's like we can't even comprehend disclosure. And then the other one is that we are more powerful. That's what they've hidden from us, especially to me since the early 1900s, in the last 120 years, maybe 150 years, like, that they can't figure out how powerful they are. They squashed all those movements that were showing us, like, basically our psychic powers and all that, kind of poo-pooed it all, tried to keep us under this materialistic paradigm. And now we're kind of like, I think we're entering into this age where it's coming out again, which is exactly what you're talking about.
So you heard of Vibravision? You know about that?
I've heard about it.
Okay, so there's the Indonesian royal family had this kind of secret martial art thing that they kept to themselves for centuries, and this gentleman learned it, and it would take them decades to learn it. He figured out how to teach it to you in a week, right? And so he's been doing seminars. I have several friends that have done it, and I've done some of the introductory seminars. Basically, he started it because he could teach blind people to see without their eyes.
Yeah,
And then,
Caroline Corey has a whole movie on it.
okay, so
Yeah,
you,
or sorry, not a whole movie. She's got a big section of her movie on that, and I think it's called Superhuman or Superpowers or something like that.
okay, yeah. So this is along the line of that. It's like all these things that we are capable of, and we're trainable. And especially if you start, the children do it really quickly. You know, they got them going double blindfolded, going through mazes, picking colors off of a table. So this is red, that's green, that's blue. And what they said was, what happens is it's not just that, but when you walk into a business meeting or you walk into a room, you immediately know this deal's going to work for me. This deal's not going to work for me. You know, it's an intuitive kind of lock in to a part of our consciousness that, you know, we're not used to using. So it, the my point is, now that I know you're awake, you're responsible, because we need to let everybody know that, hey, we don't have to put up with this bullshit, right? It just takes everybody being awake, and we don't have to have all of us. We just need a critical mass to start understanding that everything we say, everything we think, everything we do, every time you hold the door open for somebody, you say, excuse me, you pick something up, you give, you know, you do something nice, you create beauty, you create thoughts of beauty, you project beauty, you say a prayer. Those things are critically important to everything. Civilization, where we're going. You want to get rid of this blood-sucking, parasitic, psychopathic elite? We can do it.
Yeah, I love it. So you mentioned this. Go ahead, Darren.
Well, that's interesting because it goes back to what we were talking about the early 90s with Clinton, when what is sold as deregulation actually turns out to be a higher form of regulation through the private sector. It was like, oh yeah, well, before the actual regulation they're getting rid of is monopoly. I mean, but they just sell it in a different way. So it sounds like deregulation, where now you've got the regulation of one or two or three companies owning the entire sector. It's like that's when they start to really clamp down, it seems like, on the entertainment industry and the different propaganda delivery mechanisms.
You know, okay, so you're reminding me, because I didn't really finish that very well. The reason I went into music was because I thought this is where visionary people are able to say things and have power and not be a part of the political system. To me, it seemed like like that's where I wanted to be. And then just as I was getting into it, it was all the fangs were being pulled out of it.
Right,
you know?
right. Which is what I wanted to ask you, which kind of derails Darren's question a little bit, but it seems like things shifted in the early 90s, like right at the time frame you're talking about with the type of music, and everything sort of just shifted away from that 80s kind of with with all the popular 80s music, and then we went into the grunge and all this other weird stuff through the 2000s. Like, what is that part? Is what you're saying is that was kind of engineered? It was coming from sort of a centralized source?
You've got luckily you don't have sponsors. Okay.
Oh yeah,
Okay, so yeah, we all know who controls entertainment, right? I have to be careful. I have 100 people that work for me, and I have like 50,000 people that come to my business this year. So I have to be okay. This, I'll just tell you a quick story. This is a side thing, but so you have a campground, right? And you get these like super woke liberals from like downstate. God love them. I mean, here's the thing. Everybody is doing the best with the information they have. So I'm not making a judgment. It's just that when it affects me, okay. So these campers had gone to town. They bought a bunch of flags. They wanted to jazz up their campsite. You know, it was a collection of flags. It was Michigan flag and a national flag. And one of them was the rebel flag, right? Which is not it's not really a political flag. You know, I mean, it's, if you look at the Civil War, that wasn't the flag, right? And anyway, so it was one of these flags. So we get Mr. Virtue Signaling comes up, and he's just offended, and he wants us to take that flag right down. I'm like, okay, well, we rented that site. That's their property. They're gone for the day. And actually, my brother took care of this. He did a good job of it. And he said, okay, well, when they come back, we'll talk to them. So they came back and they said, you know, these people are having a problem and they're really offended by this flag. And would you mind? It's just like, no, it was not a big deal. They took it down. It was like 2 or 3 hours later, right? Well, that wasn't quick enough. So they go on Yelp and they say, this place is racist, and they allowed this, blah, blah, and then we're going to the school board because our school brings a thing up there every year, and we're going to, and they did, because that group didn't come anymore, which that's fine or whatever. Anyway, so then Yelp is calling me about running ads, right? Because they post this on Yelp that we're racist. So I'm going, this is what happened, and I'm really happy that he got the virtue signal that he was way more woke than we are, but that really wasn't what happened here. And everybody responded and did what they could to help him feel better, but it wasn't fast enough because we weren't going to violate somebody's like property rights and do something without talking to them. And so Yelp would not take that down, left it up there. And so every year some poor guy gets assigned to get a hold of me to run ads, and I'm like, dude, I am not putting a dime into your company if you're going to allow this kind of stuff. So that said, it's like, that's why I'm saying I also, when I'm writing this book and I'm skating between people's reputations and their livelihood and their things they've told me, I also have to be careful about my partners, my brothers, and my customers, because I end up in a kind of a vulnerable position. So, but ultimately, if I stick to the main message of you are more powerful than you think, you can change the world, and you just basically, every one of us, it takes a lot of discipline, because every thought, if you think about, you get to be a more powerful entity, you go to a higher vibration, and everything that you're focusing on manifests. That could be a little dangerous if you don't get it under control, right? And this technique that Nassim showed me, where all of a sudden this ring that I lost on the Nile River in Egypt shows up in my friend's apartment in Hollywood after I did this thing, showed me that that was just a tiny version of it. But basically what's going to come out, I just saw Nassim a few weeks ago in New York, and he's a little freaked out because he basically is pretty much unified physics, and nobody's paying attention. I mean, if you look at his papers and the people he worked with, I mean, he's got the math, it's all there, right? And when you unify physics, it's not just all the numbers are pretty and they work, and it's beautiful too. I mean, you don't need string theory, you don't need dark matter, you don't need any of that shit. Like, it comes down to, Randall would totally because it comes down to geometry. And basically, everything is the same particle, but the way that these particles assemble and the geometries of them become, if they're simple shape like a cube or whatever, they become something mineral. If they're more like a dodecahedron or whatever, they become organic. And the hardest thing in physics is like when you're trying to think of the strong force and the weak force, right? The strong force is when you're talking about these little tiny subatomic particles assembling, because if you took the forces that you got two magnets and they don't want to go together because you've got the two positive poles, right? That's kind of what these subatomic particles are like. So to make them assemble, to come together, if you took the forces at that level and brought them up, it would be like near the mouth of a black hole. It would be super powerful. That's why they call that the strong force. And then you've got like the sun and the moon and the stars or whatever, and and these rotations and these gravities, and that's considered a weak force. And you're thinking like these huge astronomical things and this force of gravity, that's the weak force. But when you the missing component of all of this, which has been, this is, in order to stay alive as a scientist, they had to separate, verifiable, testable science from spirituality, right? But the problem is you can't unify physics without spirituality in consciousness, because it's part of it. And it's also part of the control system. So, and it's kind of a hard sell to people that have been brought up in the scientific community to start, because they all think of it as being woo-woo, but when the woo-woo starts being like provable scientifically, like my skeptical editor, I have a whole section on there on the proofs of consciousness and its effects on reality. And it was like, this is my fight with AI, right? Because everything that I did with him, I just had to footnote the shit out of it. I had to because the good thing about AI is like, I can remember, I know this is a fact, but I don't know where I saw it or what year it was or what scientist, and I can find it, right? So I got I have these sections of my book where he's got a problem with, and it's just footnoted like crazy. And I'm thinking, okay, I can, I'm making this book so it's skimmable because people don't read the way they used to, right? So if I put footnotes everywhere, it's just going to slow them down. So I just make a statement at the beginning saying, look, I'm going to put all the stuff at the end. I've got 3 editors. They're kicking my ass. And trust me, like, this stuff is vetted. If you want to look it up, it's all there. And then I've got a few places where I've got the, things footnoted. But in AI, I go in and go, okay, this is what I want to do. Okay, here's the book. And I got a bunch of stuff at the end, references. I got a bunch of stuff footnoted, but I want you to move all of it there to the end. And anything that's critical, you can leave it in place. This is like 4 days of it messing with me, And I think I'm just going to go to Fiverr and get somebody to handle it for me, But it just freaking lies. It's slippery, and it's like, check back later. I'm like, I already learned, like, oh no, it doesn't do anything in the background. When you go away and it says to come back, it's not doing anything. And then it'll, I'm always like, what do I tell you to remind you of where we're at on this, right? Because if I do have to leave. So anyway.
So, well, have you tried like Grok or some of the other ones? I mean, ChatGPT might be literally slipping away. Like,
well, the latest, this is a weird thing. So, okay. Let me think how deep in this rabbit hole I want to go with you. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, no matter what, whether you trust Elon or not, he's saying the right things about Grok. So
Grok is super mainstream, super locked into it, which is fine, because actually part of this model that I'm putting together of restructuring human knowledge uses AI, but it uses it because it can arrange things, not because it's right about anything. I mean, my biggest pet peeve nowadays is when I'm saying something to give somebody some knowledge that they would have no way of getting from people that I freaking, like, I can't say a lot, but whatever. And then they give me a Grok thing and they say, oh, you're wrong because of this. I'm like, like things about the sun, and I'm just like, but you can't help it. Like I said, there's these biases are just built into everything. So you have to just remember that you can use them as a tool. Yeah. Like, let's say I got a concept and it's a incredible concept, and I put it in my knowledge structure, and I run it through with a bias of an esoteric bias, a mainstream academic bias, a fringe bias, and then I can compare the results to it, right? It becomes a tool rather than something to pretend it doesn't exist, like pretending that we have non-biased news, we have non-biased results for our science, right? So the first thing we need to do is to declaw freaking academia, because it's just become this big kind of ego pissing contest. Like talking to my skeptical editor, he's talking about, these science organizations, and you get into the National Foundation of this, and he goes, it's like a men's club, like, hey, this guy on our, we need one more for our university, for our prestige or whatever. So let's all vote for him, and you get your friends to vote for, it doesn't have anything to do with science or the evolution of knowledge. And there's these things that have been revealed lately. No one's talking about the replication crisis. You guys probably run into this, right?
Yeah.
It just basically shows you, like, people are just writing papers to get published, to get, they make a tweak on something. Nothing's ever been replicated, and you end up with things like medicines for Alzheimer's that have been not proven, were falsely put together, created billion-dollar industries that affected millions, if not billions, of people, that gave them medicines that people were already struggling. It made things worse. My dad had Alzheimer's, so like, this is like, just really pissed me off, and it went on for years, and it's just taken until recently for them to go, yeah, none of this makes sense, all these drugs that they're like schizophrenia and stuff, like what Freud said, it's like, kind of, there's like not any basis for any of this bullshit, it makes you a little worried when you start agreeing with Tom Cruise about, drugs, but, he was right,
They also just need a headline sometimes, so they can just do these little fake studies to get a headline so the governments can use it against you. And that's where we're at in Canada anyways.
Oh, dude, that's the strategy. It's like they take something and they know if they tweak it a bit, and it got detention before, they can, do it again. And Canada. Oh man.
Canada's trouble.
Well, listen, we would be even worse, you know. I mean, where the way things were going here was frightening. And the thing is, like I said, I see these people and they're so serious, right? I'm just like, just turn off the TV, you know. Like, oh, I've got to leave. Oh, I've got to hide out in my small town. I'm like, it's just, you know, it, it, it the the programming is so expert to keep us. Okay, this is something else that I have no basis for this at all. This is just conjecture. Maybe because you guys have a very rich, uh, you know, variety of sources. Maybe you can help me with this. I have a theory that out of the womb we have maybe two, maybe three different kind of hard wirings that we can't change that when we come out, right? And so let's say maybe the one wiring is maybe that, let's just give it a label of a liberal, you know, and the other one would be like the conservative, right? And then we have these like think tanks that are put together with all these really smart people, and they figure out like what are these kind of wedge issues that we can get this wiring competing with this wiring, right? And then we go back a few thousand years, and we got these religions that are pretty much set up from the get-go to conflict with each other. If you look at them, at the basis of them, they're not made to mesh, you know. So this whole idea of loosh, and because I'm a certain level of physics. Let's get back to Randall and Malcolm. Malcolm is I guess Malcolm's like, he disappeared into India, and now some stuff is coming out now. My fingers are crossed this. I had this whole plan. I sat down with Randall. I'm like, dude, if I could like get one of these working, we have a local ferry here that, okay, Northern Michigan. It's like the #1 TripAdvisor tourist destination on Earth, which I can argue July, August, I could say that's true, but I've been other places that are awesome too. But it's an amazing place. So for years there was these ferry lines that would take you from Mackinac City to the island. Now Mackinac Island is famous because they don't allow any motor vehicles. It's all horses and bicycles, and it's like going back in time. They shot Somewhere in Time with Christopher Reeve there, and it's like going back in time. And the natives considered it their most sacred place. It's their Garden of Eden. I've since just recently learned that before there was an Epstein Island, that was Epstein Island. And that's a whole nother rabbit hole. Anyway, so for years, there was 3 boat lines, and a lot of local families had, you know, at the board, and there was free parking, and you'd go over for the day, and they had the parking. Anyway, it was great. So this family from Florida or something comes in, buys up all of them, and suddenly free parking becomes $70 a day, and then they close 3 of the other boat places where you park, and they made everybody line up for hours at this other one because it would make $11,000 more a day without paying these other people. Anyway, and then my cousin was a CEO of one of the boat lines here. They immediately file a lawsuit. Their business plan is file lawsuits against everybody, right? File a lawsuit against him. They, you know, basically alleged a bunch of stuff that was just ridiculous. Blah, blah. Anyway, so I'm a parentified child. I was put in charge of my little brothers when I was a kid. So I'm everybody's dad. Like, somebody says something shitty about either of you guys now, you know, now that I know you, like, I'll be pissed off. I'll be like your dad. I'll be like going after them, you know? So so my cousin is, you know, being attacked by them. So I'm thinking, hey, so if I looked it up, I could get a ferry boat for about $2 million, and I could get some investors for that. And then if I get Malcolm's, you know, thunderstorm generator on that, and we can undercut them on the energy costs, we can cut the fee down to go to the island. And then I already have enough property for the parking, give the free parking. And, you know, so I had this whole thing like lined out, you know, so then I get to sit down with Randall, and he's like, you're like, he went to India, and, you know, and so I'm hoping that, you know, that, you know, he comes back out and shows his head. But my point from all of that is, you know, you take the thunderstorm generator, you got that kind of globe thing, right? And you cut it open after a while, and there's like crystals growing in it, right? you're basically transmuting. That's the physics where you're transmuting. You've got carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and you're transmuting back into oxygen. So at a certain level of physics, there's no scarcity, right? Like, silver's going like this right now. You just like make silver, right?
Yeah.
I was talking to Nassim about that. He goes, yeah, he goes, at this level of physics, he goes, you don't like this planet, you just go make a planet, make it, right?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, this is my idea about the story. Like, so how does it make sense? Let's say you're an elite, and yeah, you want to control people, you want to have everything go your way, you don't want to have any surprises, but you've been, for at least 100 years that I know of, and probably longer, have known about, because once you crack gravity control, once you crack any of these things, it all cracks, right? And I know a few people that have done it, and basically at that level, what kind of psychopath do you have to be? Because you could have whatever you wanted, they could have whatever they wanted. Why do you need to control people? Why do you need to oppress them? Why do you need to make them, you pay lots of money to keep them freezing to death in the winter, right? What kind of psychopath are you? So the only thing that makes sense to me is that this whole story about Loosh, that there is either a human element to it, or a NHI element to it, or a transdimensional element to it, that something is profiting from that kind of energy.
A dark entity. I mean, it could be like that's what we keep coming back to, is it's like a spiritual dark force, or something.
Or it's just the ruling people, it's just because if you can figure this out and you're at the highest level, you're talking about how we all have these sort of competing spheres of manifestation. We've each got sort of this sphere, but there's 7 billion spheres kind of overlapping. So you got to kind of work within this system to manifest things that don't throw the other spheres off too much. Otherwise, it kind of just kiboshes the whole thing. And if you can figure out a way to keep, whatever the number is, there's a number, I don't know if it's 50%. I don't know if it's less than that. I've heard the number even 3% is enough thrown around, or things like that. But if you can keep enough of the public aligned with your version of reality, then you're it's kind of like it's almost like it's like you're the programmer now. You've managed to get into the reality on the level of the programmer, and if you can get enough of these fucking nodes to toe the line, then the rest of us might as well be yelling at the fucking wall. I mean, it kind of looks like it now, where you can see it sort of coming in that kind of direction, where it's like, I mean, you can look at anything anywhere, and it's like, how the fuck can these people still be in this fucking simulation? Like, how can they live in this complete alternate fucking reality that I do, where even the TV they're watching is contradicting itself every other week and things like that? And I don't know if it's a dark entity, if it's just our entity, but we've kind of created this thing where we probably had a bunch of, different semi-realities going on at the same time. And now that we've created this weird monoculture, it's just the same. It's the same thing, which I think makes it even harder to crack open.
We'll give the motivation for, like, the WEF wanting to, make a one world everything, because it makes it easier to synchronize whatever it is that they were wanting to program,
Yeah.
Yeah, and now that they've got all these fucking data points on us that are just like, they managed to get them devices in. So the TV, you never really had a constant feedback loop. Now you've got a constant feedback loop on, hey, if we throw this shit at Graham, it's gonna fucking get him pissed off. It don't matter what kind of mood he's in. If I can get him to see these posts, then we can get him back into the game. Even if he's in the game fighting as like a freedom fighter in the game, it doesn't matter. As long as we're paying attention to the game, then the structures that are in the game stay in the same position.
You reminded me, Darren, that you had said something about, you're looking at X, and it was like just a bunch of shit that pisses you off, right? And that was happening to me too. And I'm like, what? What's going on here? Because I'm just looking through it, and I'm like, I don't even want to like open this anymore, and so I started thinking like, okay, I'm the programmer here, and so if I'm engaging with any of this stuff, it's going to feed it to me. So then I just started looking for positive keywords and looking up, you know, posts and creators that had to do with that. Because I mean, there are thousands of stories going on all the time, all over the world, all kinds of crazy, amazing things. But we're hearing about, you know, this liberal woman says this, fascist, whatever this, and it's all made to create rage, which is exactly the opposite of what I know needs to happen, right? So,
Yeah, exactly. It's like I'm almost starting to look at those like social media things as like models for reality because it's almost like a little mini civilization in itself that you can start because it's like a little they call it the town hall, but it's fucking way beyond that. And so it's like this little thing where they can dump in stuff and see the reaction, and then they can sort of take, hey man, this got everybody revved up. So if we could take this onto the global stage and bring this out of the information only and bring it into the physical world, then we can, just it's kind of like where it's like a new false flag prediction engine.
so you just reminded me, the NSA just got somebody on the board at OpenAI, and this goes back to Laura Eisenhower, and like I ended up Trevor introduced me to Drago Reed, and he knew that I did film and video stuff, and he asked me to do a intro for his podcast, right? And I'm thinking, okay, well, you have a title and a sounder, and I'm thinking, who needs intros for podcasts anyway? Like, you want to like get into it, like, don't give me like a big intro, right? So I said, okay, what do you have in mind? And he sends me like his life story, and I'm like, okay, I will do this. I have like so much to do. I will do this for you, So I did it, and I just used some AI stuff to kind of show, like, he had this experience where he's getting abducted as a child and being shown that it's Grays, but it's actually the military, and then he's being, used in the 20 and back program and blah blah blah. So I simulate all this, and that his town is opening portals and blah blah. Anyway, so then all the other dudes in that community see it and they all dig it, and so then they get a hold. So now I have like all of these friends in this really scary area of like understanding like what goes on, basically to me it all traces back to after World War II when we brought on those Project Paperclip people in, and they just kind of just took over shit. And then
I would go back like another decade, because the more I'm looking at, sure starts to seem like that whole regime, the whole Nazi regime, is like one of our first ops. It's like an OSS fucking operation that starts going after Russia for no real reason, that we end up in a thing with later, and then we end up. It's like, I mean, the main example I always point to is that 1942, December 12th, whatever it is, the U.S. Japan bombs Pearl Harbor, which there's a shitload of evidence points to that. Roosevelt knew that was going to happen and allowed it to happen to get you guys into the war. But then he comes out and says, Europe first, Europe first, Europe first in 1942, and spends almost 2 years doing nothing in Europe, really bumming around the Pacific, until it becomes painfully obvious that the Russians are going to take Berlin. The Soviets are going to take Berlin. Then all of a sudden we got D-Day. 6 months later, the Allies, after 2 years of fucking around doing nothing, all of a sudden within 6 months they can be in Berlin. But they just had to get to the point where they needed to. And then all these guys start disappearing to places like Argentina, and it seems to me like it was an extraction before the Soviets got to their assets. And the Soviets got to a bunch of their assets, but they extracted a bunch of them. And now it almost seems like they're gearing up to run the same play again, to a certain extent. And I don't know where the head's going to be, but it's not a coincidence that we have Fuentes and all this other stuff sort of percolating up in the background. It's not organic.
Yeah, they do use the same playbooks over. Okay, so I'm totally on board with that. So let me think how I can say this. Okay, so I know 3 different people in the same ancient secret society thing. And those guys don't get along either. They have different factions and whatever. And so I kind of know if I give them something like it's a little wrong and they want to like and on purpose, and then they'll correct me and they give me a little more information. I have this way of like kind of getting information out, right? So it originally started with I was with Mohammed Ibrahim in Egypt. We were talking, and I said, it occurs to me. I hadn't thought of this before. At that time, I was just kind of like putting things together. That none of these Iraq wars ever made any sense at all. And you got all of a sudden you've got these this organization that's ISIS that has guys with British accents with meta tags on their videos from Santa Monica, stuff doesn't make any sense, right? And I said, from what I've been learning about ancient technology and civilizations is like, Iraq is like the shit, And I said, I think that war, there was no other clear motivation for it. I think that war was over ancient technology. And Muhammad goes, I agree 100%, right? So then I'm talking to secret society guy, right? And I bring up this conversation. He goes, I said, I think the Iraq wars were all over ancient technology. He goes, how about all wars?
Wow.
And so I've been sitting with that for a while, right? And when you go back, it makes a lot of sense. And especially since I know some of the things that they have and they've recovered, and like I can get some of them to talk about. I'm like, so you got 4 of these, and you know where 2 more are? And they go, no, we have 6 of them. You can get little things out of them, right?
The Ark of the Covenant, or
well, yeah,
we've had them on. We
got a
bunch. We went over that whole thing.
Well, look, there's another layer to this where there was a tomb found that everybody's been looking for forever, that no one could ever find out about where it is because it'll start a war. And I had thought that there was a live ark in it, because I'd seen a bit of a tape, and it made me think that there was a force field. And because I saw this guy swing a club and hit it in midair, it just shattered. And I was like, and when you're in these places, like the phones don't work. It was not that good of a video, like the phones don't work good and stuff. But I could see that, and I could see like the sarcophagus, and anyway. So I'm talking to another secret society guy, and I'm going, I think that, things still active there, and it makes me a little worried because the king of that country is probably thinking, oh man, if I got this, the biblical thing is if you have this, no army can defeat you, right? And those things have consciousness. You don't mess with them. They're some other thing, and they don't do what they don't want to do. And I said, he's probably lost a whole lot of people by now. So I'm talking to another secret society guy. So I said, I'm not going to give up anything, but there was a artifact found in a place unexpected and he said, the king of blah, blah called me last week. And I'm like, which was exactly right. He knew what I was talking about. It was almost weird. It was like he read my mind, right? And I said, so we got into the discussion about the arcs, right? And so then I kind of relaxed because those guys know how to handle. I mean, good or bad, I'm not making judgments on those guys. The thing is, it pisses me off about these ancient secret societies is they have a lot of information that could help everybody, and they sit on it and they kind of use it for themselves. So that kind of pisses me off a little bit.
Well, it seems like they're opening up, though. I mean, it seems like this year, literally, like this year, last year, coming up, they're trying to let it out. It seems like, but
well, it's the thing that you were talking about earlier about there's only so much that people can handle, and so I think they have to be careful.
The other thing is too, there's also a huge push against all that too. I mean, there's even a push against New Age and all this stuff. I don't know how much you're sort of familiar with the sort of the counterculture, like the culture war about like New Age versus Christianity versus all this. So I mean, there's a lot of people that are just anything Freemason, anything kind of Templar. They're just rallying against it. It's crazy. So there's a bunch of different factions and a bunch of different pushbacks too, which is interesting.
Well, so imagine if if you wanted to keep us suppressed, right,
Yeah.
and keep us from learning this, that's the best way to do it. Is gives all, like, because basically, New Age, Christianity, spiritual, all that thing, it ties together. There's common points of it, and
Yep.
just keep us like fighting.
Yep. Totally. Yeah.
So then I'm talking to my third person, and there's guys all seem to know about this secret place or whatever, and I'm talking about it, and I said I was told that they had a tunnel under this to get to it because that was in the way, and he said no, the arc melted down and it was no longer active because and he had a name for it. It was some kind of a substance that is clear that you cannot get through it. You cannot blow it up. You cannot drill through it. And it was covering over the sarcophagus. And so, which tells me, because this particular ruler was very late in the Egyptian dynasties, right? So that means they had really advanced tools, probably left over from the previous cataclysm up to that point. And somebody's got these now, I mean, we're talking about like King Solomon things, that cut stone, or things that, whatever. And so these tools, these things left over, these ancient technologies, and I've seen enough of them to know that they were way smarter, way more capable than we are now. I've seen things we just cannot, replicate.
I got one right here.
Well, that is beautiful. That is beautiful. Yeah, I mean, there you go. There you go. Okay, let me see.
Shelly, here, let me throw a note in here from Shelly, because she's been commenting quite a bit. She's having all these synchronicities with the live stream. Hey, Shelly, but she says the LHC, so Large Hadron Collider, was completed towards the end of the Iraq War. I think they were using this stuff to power colliders they're doing all these quantum interdimensional experiments with. I love this guy even more. So she's really digging you.
Well, check out my book, because if I finish it in June like I'm supposed to, I'm just kind of giving you the breadcrumbs to actually help with, because this is our job now. We need to get a critical mass of people to understand what's really going on, and we can fix this. Either that or we're in trouble.
Yeah.
Well, you have, I mean, this has been a great chat. Don't you have a YouTube channel and stuff too that people could check out right now? They don't have to wait for the book.
Yeah. So actually, it's like the webpage, mortalsoferarth.com, YouTube channel, Substack, TikTok, Facebook, X. God help me, got to do them all. Oh, I was talking to Praveen about this. I said, so you're a monk? He goes,
well, he's a Facebook guy.
Yeah. And he said, yeah, because, but he's doing everything himself, all his videos and everything. And he said, yeah. He says, you can't not be a monk. If you're going to be doing this all the time, you just have no time for anything. Right.
Yeah.
I said, I totally relate,
It's weird how the guys in Europe and India are all on Facebook and Instagram is their main thing. And then over here, Telegram and X and WhatsApp. Yeah. WhatsApp is, it's so weird how
huge.
These geographical
areas have different social media focuses too.
I get asked all the time about what's your Insta. I'm like, I don't want to do that. Like I got thrown off of Insta for my flower and sunrise photos for some reason, and they would never let me back on. So I'm just like, fuck you guys,
Yeah.
I was off of Twitter for years, and then they let me back on.
Yeah, so they let me back on, but I'm like, do I really want to do this again? I don't know.
Well, Frank, this has been a fantastic chat. Thanks for coming on the show. You mentioned Mortals of Earth. Is there any place else our listeners can track you down or get a hold of you or watch your stuff?
Well, I do want to mention my friend Trevor has put together this incredible journey. I am really thinking about going with you guys to Malta too, by the way. But coming up, actually, it's going to be, I gotta make sure I don't leave my name, Praveen Mohan, Christopher Dunn, Armando May, Filippo Biondi, and Trevor Grassi. These are all pals of mine. They're amazing people, and putting them all together is going to be incredible in Egypt. There's a few things there that I'm going to get them on camera talking about, and but this tour is not like anyone I've ever seen, because I've been there a couple times, and there's the main points everybody gets you to. This, we're going to underground places. I'm going down the Osiris shaft. I mean, crazy stuff. Because Trevor, I'm like, he's been thinking about this for 20 years, and it's happening March 4th through the 17th. So just look up Trevor Grassi. It's Recovering Technologies. And then I'm going to jump down into Praveen's got a tour going to Angkor Wat from March 30th through the 27th. And then I'm going to come back to Egypt to go to the Sphinx for the Easter morning sunrise because, Chris Bledsoe has been talking about the Regulus coming up, right? And all these telepathy tape kids are seeing something, they've got something, and some of them are supposed to come there too. So we'll see. I just figure, hey, I'm going to be that part of the world. Let me go to the Sphinx on Easter morning. Let's check it out. Anyway.
Awesome. Thanks.
We're going to Easter Island at the end of April, I think. It was supposed to be March, but we ended up switching it to April. So yeah, we got Easter Island and then Randall, and then we got a solstice thing at Serpent Mound, and then we're doing that Malta trip. It looks like that's going to be something else.
Easter Island. So have you been there?
This will be our first time.
Okay. So so this is crazy. Easter Island has like hundreds of miles of lava tubes, right? And the people that live there, like my waitress, it's like, yeah, my boyfriend and I, yeah, we've been living in a cave for 3 years, and then we're talking to the driver, and his brother's been living in a cave for 17 years. You go in these caves and there's like bees and they're making honey over here, right? And then there's a banana tree growing and a guava tree because the sun's coming up, right? And then the water's dripping through and it's like mineral water that's really pure. The temperature's like really moderate inside. It's like it's freaking amazing. Like I know they're going to get you into some of the caves, but when you get in there and you realize that there's hundreds of miles, and the people there just kind of commonly move in and live in them. But the one thing that happened when I got off the plane in Easter Island, I was like, okay, why do I feel like I'm 10 years old? What's going on? And I was like, it was a sense thing. And I was like, there's not a bunch of 5G and Wi-Fi and shit here, And so all of a sudden, it just took me back like to this feeling I had when I was a kid. And it made me realize how much, actually I go into this in the book now, the difference between now and 10 years ago, as far as EMF smog around us, it's not like a million times more. It's not a billion times more. It's not a trillion times more. It's like a quintillion times more, which is like a bath and something we never agreed to. That if you started counting when supposedly the Big Bang happened, what, 1, 2, 3, to now 34 billion years, you wouldn't even be to a quintillion yet. That's how much we're in. So you go to Easter Island and you're like, I mean, if you're old enough like me to remember before, a lot of this stuff was around us. So unfortunately, though, I'm allergic to everything there. The whole time I'm there, I'm just like, I'm allergic to paradise, man. The place is just gorgeous and amazing. I'm so happy that you're going to go and experience it.
Yeah, we're sort of crossing them off the list. It's been, we were in Egypt in 2022, and then we haven't done South America yet, but we'll get to Easter Island, and then we'll get to Malta, which was started as a small trip and then expanded into the 13 days because we found all this stuff on Sardinia that is crazy looking, and it fits into the past culture, and there seems to be some alignments there that line up with some cataclysm stuff. So it's going to be quite a trip. Yeah, it's going to be quite an adventure. So it'd be great to have you with us, Frank Rogala. This has been fantastic. It's been great chatting. It was great to meet you in Bonneville, and I can't wait to hang out again.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it.
See you, buddy.
Hey, Graham.
Ooh, what am I doing? And that was our chat with Frank Rogala, saving civilization and cracking open reality. Check out his podcast, Mortals of Earth. What'd you think?
Oh, we got to do that again. Yeah, I already can't wait till the next time.
Yeah, we could have done another hour and a half on that. We'll have to do another one for sure. And check out those tours. I mean, I can't recommend Egypt enough. It really was cool. We got to go into that Osiris shaft and all that stuff. So check that out. And check out our events, course, contact at thecabin.com. We actually sold a couple tickets during this interview. So that's always interesting. And yeah, check that out. We do have that big New York trip with Randall Carlson, which is pretty popular right out of the gate. I'm anticipating that one's going to sell out. Malta will sell out for sure. So check all that stuff out. And check out GramericaOutlaw.ca for more controversial content, adultbrain.ca for 230 some audiobooks now, or 220 for sure. What am I missing? GramericaCBD.com for gummies and tinctures. And I think that's it. We love you guys. Thanks for listening. And we will see you next week.